to Paired Up Story Hour. Our guest today is Jim Hartsell. How you doing, Jim?
Doing good, Jeremy. How are you?
All good. So tell me about the Sweden's book.
Well, ironically, I'm working on it this weekend. No golf, so I've almost got a chapter finished. If I can get a chapter finished over a weekend, that's a pretty good weekend. It takes 2 full days of really concentrating, not leaving the office to get something done. So yeah, I've got this is my 8th chapter. I finished if I get it done today, and I've got 14 planned, so I'm getting there.
Man, over halfway for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Have you found that during quarantine you're more creative passion to do this, or has it kind of killed it some?
No, this has actually been more, I think. I haven't wanted to play golf as much, but I've wanted to write this book more. Ironically, I don't know why, but I've been working on it for over a year, and it just it took forever to get the interviews done. But now it's starting to pick up pace. I actually think this has helped it pick up some pace, to be honest with you.
Sweet, very cool. I've been kind of back and forth on that myself too. A little slower early on, but picking up now. So, so your story today comes from across the pond, right?
Yes.
All right, why don't you take us there?
Okay, so, well, I thought about this when I saw you were doing this, and I've played with so many random people over the years, and over in Scotland, it's more accepted in some ways to just join up with people. It's just a kind of a way that they play a lot of times. So anyway, this was, I think, my second trip in 1997, and I was with my dad and my uncle. They were that's who I played golf with growing up. I mean, played every weekend with them. They were 3 or 4 day a week golfers their entire life. And anyway, so we had gone up to Dornoch and Brora, and they were older, probably my age I am now, ironically. But we got up there and played in the morning, all 3 of us, and the weather was just terrible. I mean, raining and cold and windy, and this was in August. And we got through, and I told them we went and get something to eat in the clubhouse, and they were like, we're not playing anymore. It's worn us out. It's this weather. We're not going back out. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to play again because we're here. And I said, who knows, the weather might change. So I went in the pro shop and I said, look, I'm going to go back out. And they said, yeah, that's fine. It's not that crowded. There's a man about to go off on one. Why don't you go join up with him? So went out there, and there was a cart pulled up right beside the first tee, which I had never seen a golf cart in Scotland. That's the first one I'd ever seen. They don't ride over there. I mean, it's just,
right.
It's not the way they play golf. And I thought, well, this is very odd. And it was one of those old time golf carts that didn't have the top on it, like like you'd see from the 60s or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he had it pulled right up to the tee, and he was kind of loosening up, and I went up there, and the starter said, well, just go over and introduce yourself. So I went over and I said, look, do you mind if I join up? He said, no, I'd love that. He said, I wanted to play here my whole life, and I just got here today. I'm so excited to be here. And we introduced ourselves. His name was Alan. And he said, well, I've got a cart. But he didn't explain that right then. And so he went out to his shop. You tell me he was a player. And he was early 60s, mid 60s. And but he didn't hit it very far, but he always hit it straight, and he kept it in play. And we were, he was just having a great time cutting up, and we were talking. And so we got to about, you probably hadn't ever, I don't think you've been to Dornoch, but virtually every tee at Dornoch, you just kind of stop and look around. It's just like an incredible view on every hole. And we got to about the 4th hole, and he started telling me, he said, well, you know how you kind of, when you get into it, you start telling people what you do for a living and stuff. And he asked me what I did. I said, well, I'm an architect. And he said, well, I'm a doctor, and I live in California. He was an American. And he said, you know, I've wanted to come here my whole life. He said, but my health is not very good. He said, I really, quite frankly, he said, that's why I've got this cart. He said, I've got this muscular disease that's getting worse. And he said, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to play golf. And I was like, oh my God, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he was sort of matter of fact about it. He was smiling, and I thought, well, I don't know, it just kind of struck me that this guy's, you know, wanted to do this his whole life, and he's here now, and who knows, this may be one of his only times he gets to do it. So we just had a great time. We continued around. He would drive right up to his ball. He wouldn't walk more than a few feet. You know, I had a camera. This was before iPhones. So I had an actual camera I was carrying around. Mm-hmm. And you know me, I was taking pictures on every hole, just, you know,
right,
all over the place. And he said, we got on the back nine, and this was the other thing about the second or third hole. The sun came out, and the wind died down, the rain stopped. It was perfect. I mean, just a perfect afternoon, which happens in Scotland a lot. You just don't ever know. So anyway, we get on the back, and he sees me taking these pictures. He says, you know, do you mind taking a few of me while you're doing it? I said, no, man, that's fine. So I had quite honestly, but the rest of the way in, I took a few of him. And anyway, we got to the end, and you know, we were staying on the 18th, and he said, this was so much fun. He said, I really appreciate it, you coming out here with me. And I said, no, I thought it was great. And he said, I said, why don't you come in and have a beer with me? He said, no, my wife's waiting on me. She's going to pick me up, and we've got to go somewhere else. And she's going to drive me to, I can't remember where they were going, but she was waiting on him. And he said, but he said, let me give you, he said, you have an email address. And this was like, you were a kid then, but this was back in the AOL days. I mean, it was email. Oh, people had email, but they hadn't had it very long. But I happened to have mine, and I had one for work. And so I wrote it down and gave it to him. And he said, when I get home, he said, I'll send you my contact information, and you send me some of these pictures if you don't mind. So I went in, honestly, forgot about it. We had that. This was like the second day or third day of our trip. And went in, had a beer, went and met my uncle and my dad downtown to eat somewhere, went on to Roar, had the rest of the trip. And I don't know, got home and had an email from him about a week after I got home. He said, hey, Jim, do you remember me? This is Alan. Here's my address. And so I got them developed, and I sent him, I don't know, I probably had 15 or 20 pictures, mailed them to him. And I didn't hear anything for a long time. I mean, you didn't even email stuff. You didn't email attachments back then. I mean, you could send emails back and forth. You actually had to mail stuff. So mailed him out to California, and I didn't hear anything for a long time. And about a year later, I got an email from him, and he said, I just want to let you know how much that day meant to me and how much those pictures meant. He said, I can't play anymore. My health is really deteriorating. But you know, that round was one of the highlights of my golf life. And I mean, just imagine that. And I guess the moral of that, and I didn't ever hear anything else from him again after that. I assume from the tone of that email, he was not doing well. But I guess the moral of that whole story is you never know when you have these random pairings, which you do this all the time. You don't know what people's story is, or you don't know what's going on, and you don't know how you might affect their day. I mean, I don't have that email anymore. I've been through 25 computers since then, but I just remember him saying it was the greatest golf day of his life. And I don't know, it's just always stuck with me. And I did take I have one picture I took of him that I still have. Actually, can you see that?
Oh, no
That
way.
was
Yeah.
yeah, that was standing on the 18th. So anyway, he was a nice gentleman.
Huh.
I mean, you could tell he loved golf, and you could tell he had been a really good player, and you could also tell that he wasn't in the best of health either. But
Mm-hmm.
he was still able to play then and get around. But you know, for for somebody to get a cart at Royal Dornoch in the '90s, he must have been he was in pretty bad shape, because they probably
sure.
only had the one, and they probably used it for maintenance or something, So,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, that's the story in a nutshell. It's that one's kind of stuck with me over the years. Just remembering that.
Yeah, it's awesome. Isn't that crazy how you can just you being out there that day, you get to play basically this guy's most amazing round of his life, just you and him.
And he was, like I said, my dad and my uncle, they were like, we've had enough of this, and they're golf nuts. But the weather that morning was just horrific. I mean, you can get worn down in weather like that. I totally understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, man, I'm at Dornoch. I'm going back out there, and I'm glad I did. And and the weather changed, and it wound up being just a perfect afternoon. And so that's another moral to it. Maybe not the point of this interview, but just you don't ever know what's going to happen when you go out. So
For sure.
yeah.
That's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. So a couple quick questions on our way out. So I think I know the answer to the first one. First one is, would you play with him again?
Most definitely would. He was a nice gentleman. He loved golf. Um, yes. And I would say that 99% of the people that I've joined up with over the years, it's wound up being fun. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some more than others, but it doesn't always work that way. Occasionally you get paired with somebody that maybe plays really slow, or doesn't understand. Like, look, I'll play with anybody. I don't care, but I do like for people to play with, keep up and play. And this guy would hit. He'd go straight to his ball, hit again. Um, you know, so yeah, I definitely would do it again.
Awesome. How about this one? So even though it was an awesome day, what do you wish you could do over about that day? Anything?
I wish he would have come in and had a drink with me, and maybe ask his wife to. I was
Mm-hmm.
young back then. I didn't really. Today, that's what I would have done. I would have gone over and said, "Look, why don't you get her, and we'll come in. I'll buy y'all something to eat." And I would have done that. But I was a kid back then too, and I did invite him in, but I didn't really push it very much. I would have liked to have spent a little bit more time talking to him after the round. I mean, that's that's the sort of the recap and the sitting
Mm-hmm.
around, and the hour or two afterwards where you're kind of going over everything.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. So last one is, how did this random pairing impact your view on the golf course? I'm assuming you've been there prior to that.
I had not. It was my first trip.
Oh, that was your first trip, right?
That was my second round. I had been to Scotland, but I'd never been up to Dornoch, and
Mm-hmm.
I had built it up a lot in my head because I'd read a bunch about it. There's a bunch of great writing on it. But anyway, honestly, that morning the weather was so bad. So, have you ever played somewhere and the weather is so bad that when you get done, you almost can't remember anything? I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
so the morning was almost like that. So I was like, man, I don't want to leave this place and not have the right view of, because I played La Hinch one time in a hurricane, and it just, to this day, I can only remember like two holes. And I hate that. So I'm glad it did change my view of the course, because I went back out, had fun with this guy in nice weather, and I can remember almost the entire round to this day. I can remember shots that he hit, believe it or not. And so, yes, I'm glad that I did it. It changed my view, and it's obviously one of the top 10 or 15 courses in the world. Nobody would dispute that. I mean, you could have the British Open there if it wasn't so far north and such a small town. I mean, it's that good. So yeah, it was doing that and getting that other view of course conditions definitely changed my opinion.
And I bet when you go back, you'll think of that guy next time around.
Definitely. And, you know, I've never been back up to Dornoch. I've had 4 other trips since then, and it's way, way up north. You sort of have to, if you're going up there, it almost has to be a focus of your trip because you're going to spend so much time up there. I've focused on other areas of the country when I've gone, and I've got a couple of favorite places now. And although if we get back, we're talking about trying to swing up north again just to do it because he's never been. But yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. And hope to catch you at Sweetens Cove here pretty soon.
Yeah, I'll see you out there. Hopefully we'll get some good weather and, you know, more importantly, we get some good news on the health front, and maybe we can all get back to somewhat of a normal life before too long.
Play with some pins in again. How about that?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Jim.
All right, man. Good to talk to you.